Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, thank you, the other Jeff. Jeff Allen with South Carolina Traffic Incident Management Team. This is our second set of online team meetings. These obviously are for spring of 2021, had our first set back in the fall of 2020. If you are joining us with a telephone or a computer, please put your microphones on mute and use the chat feature if you've got any questions, or you will note as we go through the presentations, we will be listing emails and phone numbers for the presenters and for ourselves, and you're more than welcome at any point in time to get a hold of us with any questions you might have. On the bottom of the slide that you can see there are some of the things that we do in our and discuss in our team meetings when we can get back face to face. Hopefully we'll be able to do that in the fall. You see a SHEP demonstration we did up in Greenville over on the left hand side there. Absolutely fantastic, some of the stuff that these SHEP guys can do, and the demonstration was really interesting to watch as well. In the middle you can see at a Rock Hill meeting we've got a tabletop exercise. We will do those again when we start meeting face to face. That's a really good two-dimensional way of looking at what we do, why we do it, how we do it when we get out on the on these incident scenes. Then on the right hand side, the truck just recently put out of service and replaced by a brand spanking new truck, House Springs Fire Department just south of Florence, with their incident response vehicle. 100 traffic cones in the back of that truck and a message board sign that flips up. They can program whatever message they want into that, and it tows a trailer with a message board sign. They make that available to any and every agency in the Florence area that needs it to respond to a traffic incident. So absolutely great tool. And I'm understanding that there are some agencies, particularly out in that area, who have seen this this tool, if we can call it that, and they are now putting their units into play and duplicating this. And it's great to see that, because anything that we can make available like this is certainly going to make the incident scene safer for us. So who are we? Why are we here? Well, we are public safety agencies and tow operators, and you're going to see all the disciplines in just a minute. We're here so that we can network, so we can talk about what's the safe way to do this. How can we do this so that we all work together off the same sheet of music, and we all get to go home at the end of the call. That's important. There's far too many of us getting struck and injured, and unfortunately struck and killed. Agencies that are participating today, we have the tow industry of South Carolina. We'll do a presentation for you, just kind of update you on what's going on there. Operation Lifesaver, the rail industry. You get a really good little presentation from that discipline, and we definitely need all agencies to be invited. If you're talking to anybody when you're out in the field with any of the agencies on the following slide, it's very important. Law enforcement, fire, EMS, SHEP, tow and recovery, DOT, DHEC corners, and the media. We don't want the media necessarily coming in and setting a tripod and a camera up the back of the class, back of the meeting room. We want them coming in and sitting in with us and helping us facilitate a discussion in regards to, how can we do this safely? How can we, again, all play off the same sheet of music? And I'll have a little presentation towards the end of the morning, or the end of the hour, I should say, that will address what happens when we don't do that and how much better it is when we do work with the media. So we'll have that after our first two presentations. Next slide. So this is our spring online team meetings. As I mentioned earlier, we're constantly looking for suggestions for topics for future meetings. If you've got something you'd like to see covered, please get in touch with us and let us know. We will have team meetings again in the fall, October, November, probably. They may be online, or as you see, I've put in brackets, hopefully back face to face. We're doing a lot of training right now, training classes, the Sharp 2 classes, and we are back face-to-face, and we'll touch on that in just a minute. You can check at any time on sctimnetwork.com for updates on meetings and training dates and locations. We were just talking about May the 18th. We actually have a Sharp 2 class, I believe, starting about 6 o'clock out in Aiken County. That's on our calendar. If someone needs the training and they're allowed to travel to Aiken County, that training session has been set up and it's open for registrations. If your agency can host a meeting in the fall of 2021, again, please let us know. Next slide. And here's a schedule of the meetings that we are presenting, and you can see Midlands is today, Aiken's this afternoon, and then you see tomorrow we have a couple, and then next Tuesday and next Thursday we'll finish up the series of 10 meetings. Next slide. Mentioned earlier, Tim Training's picking up again, the Sharp 2 classes, and anytime someone requests one, whether it's a weekday, weeknight, Saturday, shift schedule, if there's 4 squads or 3 shifts, whatever is needed, we are more than flexible to work with agencies and put these training sessions together. If your agency would like to host a traffic incident management training session, please get a hold of us and let's get it scheduled and let's get people through it. We're still way down in numbers in relation to where we should be with all our disciplines. So we need to keep working on this, and we're here for you, and we can certainly handle pretty well any request that comes in. Keep checking sctimnetwork.com for updates to the training locations as we add them to the calendar. You can see in bold on the bottom there, minimum 15 participants. I've done training with 60, 65 in a class, so we're not worried about maximums as long as these are open to all disciplines. And until further notice, all COVID protocols will obviously be followed. Next slide, please. The numbers that were just sent to us for the end of March from the Federal Highway Administration reflect, in most states, reflect their training up to the end of March. I have added another 250, 255 in that neighborhood that have been trained in South Carolina, but they have not been added to the federal numbers yet. There was a real snafu with the FHWA website, and it took a while for some of us to get that sorted out and get back in the system. So our numbers there, that 8,676 is actually December 31st of 2020. And so is the next slide. When we talk about percentage, they've updated the percentage in some of the states, but not here in South Carolina. It's still showing 60.5, which is the number that we had attained at the end of last year. So we should be up around 62, maybe 62 and change. It'll be interesting to see the next time they issue those numbers, just exactly where we are. So locally, next slide. What have we got locally here in the Midlands? Lexington County, and these are numbers as of the 11th, which is a week ago last Sunday. We've had an update since then, but as of the 11th, Lexington County had 14 fatalities, Richland 10. You can see the numbers there. I don't have to read them out to you. You can see that the deadliest or the worst counties in the bracket down below there, Greenville 19, and it's actually up to 23 now. So in a week, it went up 4. Horry County 18, they're up to 20. Lexington has, they had 14. I believe they've leapfrogged over Spartanburg, and they've got 16 now. Spartanburg still got 15, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the numbers there, but I mean, they're just, it's going crazy again. We're way over what we had at this time last year. So it's, I mean, the speeds increased. Even though the traffic was not out there, I guess people thought I got wide open highways so I can put the pedal to the metal and drive at Mach 2 down the interstates and down the rural country roads. And now that things have started opening back up, people are back out in the road. Not only do we have these very high speeders that are leaving the road and getting into some problems, but now they're also creating some carnage with the other motorists on the road. So it's definitely a challenge for everybody that's out there responding to these incidents. Next slide, you'll see that statewide, again, as of the 11th was 247. We're up to 276 per the 18th. But when we put these numbers in here, 247, Lexington County was 5.6% of that. You can see the percentages as they go down the line with those 4 counties. So 11.7% of the fatalities in our state year to date are in those 4 counties. Next slide, please. 511, SCDOT 511, fabulous app. Right now, I think there's over 500 cameras online. Message board signs is all live feed stuff, and the people that are responsible for maintaining this are on top of this and adding information and updating this, and it's absolutely fabulous. The information that we can get out of this app. It's a free, quick download, and I think one of the biggest benefits is that SCDOT SHEP roadside assistance. Tapping on that does a star HP and lets SHEP know if you're in a SHEP area that you're needing assistance. If you're not in a SHEP area, it should let Highway Patrol know that you're broken down or you're on the side of the road and you need assistance. So that's a huge, huge tool that we can use. Next slide, please. So we are going to hand the microphone over to Anna Wingard. She's with the Towing and Recovery Association of South Carolina, and she's going to talk a little bit about working with traffic incident management in an evolving industry. Good little presentation, so sit back, relax, and Anna, it's.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay, great, good. I just got disconnected for a second. All right, so I'm Anna Wingard. I am the president of the Towing and Recovery Association of South Carolina. I'm also with Wingard Towing Service. We operate out of West Columbia. It is my husband's business. We are a 3rd generation family owned business, and we hopefully will have a 4th generation operating this business one day as well. So I joined the Towing and Recovery Association because I really wanted to try to improve our business, and I quickly realized that the way that I had to do that was completely try to improve the industry in the whole state. So that's why I'm involved, and that's kind of why I'm here. So I'm wanting to shed a little bit of light on our perspective, meaning the towing industry's perspective of how we handle a wreck scene and how we really want to continue to collaborate with all other agencies on a wreck scene, or any reason why we would be called out to a public roadway. So the ultimate goal of a towing service at a wreck scene is to safely and efficiently clear the roadways so that traffic can continue flowing after an arrest, a wreck, abandoned vehicle, private property impound, a breakdown, any reason. By working together optimally with a local towing service, all agencies on scene can keep chaos and confusion to a minimum, as well as reduce the chances of any additional wrecks and reduce the economic burden that major traffic congestions can cause a local community. There have been studies that directly tie in the longer you sit in traffic caused by a wreck to negative financial consequences. So if you're trying to get to the airport and you're stuck in traffic for an hour, you are most likely going to miss your plane. And if you are trying to get to a doctor's appointment, you'll most likely miss that appointment. So those sorts of things have been directly tied to traffic congestions. And so yes, safety is definitely a priority, but there are even bigger reverberations of that if we don't all work together efficiently. Next slide. So even though I'm really kind of representing our state, I did just kind of want to take a step back and talk about towing across the nation, because the way we do things in the state of South Carolina really isn't much different than the rest of the nation. So the towing industry is one of the very, very few industries in the entire nation that are primarily run by small family-owned businesses. So like if you want to try to compare it to like laundry business, franchises and corporations. I think it might have just cut out on me. So our towing businesses are typically run by small family-owned businesses, but only about 5% are possibly run by small government-funded entities, like the New York Police Department is run by. Their towing service, they operate theirs, and I think like the city of Columbia has maybe a tow truck or two. So my point being is that when you look at a towing service, remember that they don't operate like the other agencies. We're not Dominion Energy. We're not a government agency like a fire department or a police agency. And so some towing services are going to operate with one man and one truck, and some might operate with a fleet of 30 vehicles that spread from heavy duty to medium duty to light duty. Or you might have somebody responding on scene that owns a body shop and they just happen to have a tow truck. So there's just seems to be a good wide variety of towing service business models. So therefore that translates into the fact that there's really no standardization on how to tow a vehicle. There's no really standard procedures on how one towing business should operate to another. And so then you kind of mesh that with different police agencies and different fire agencies. And so that just kind of lends itself to potential confusion. So again, trainings like this are very important that we all try to be on the same page, especially because in the towing industry, there are extremely limited opportunities for training, especially even in our state. So we really, really love to be included in these types of trainings. All right. Next slide. So I did want to touch a little bit on how the towing industry relies on the other agencies that are seen on a public roadway on a wreck scene or a violation or anything like that. So we rely on dispatch. Typically, that's the first point of contact for us. And we really, really rely on them to tell us more than just where to show up. So we need to know other details such as a vehicle type, towing a moped versus towing an 18-wheeler, two different types of equipment, two different types of driver skill, lots more involved. So we have literally shown up and we're told it was a moped, but it was an 18-wheeler once. So you can only imagine, you know, how much time that wasted for everyone involved for just a simple, you know, overlooking details. So other pertinent details, needing to know if a vehicle's off in the woods, if they're in a ditch, what kind of a call that we're responding to, that sort of thing. And then also alternate route information is so important for us to know, because otherwise we will get stuck in the very traffic that a wreck has caused, and that doesn't help anyone. So sometimes we have to go to the next exit and back up in order to get to an accident scene so that we can clear the roadway, because sometimes we are not able to drive down a median in order to get to a wreck scene. We really don't exactly have the proper lights and jurisdiction to be doing that anyway. So, and then on the reverse side, dispatchers should be relying on us to provide accurate ETAs. And so towing services, really, that burden falls on us to accurately tell the dispatcher, and the dispatcher can then notify other agencies on scene. All right, next slide. So then the next agency that we work with the majority of the time would be a fire department. The very obvious one is where the fire trucks are blocking the accident scene, wreck scene, excuse me, with their fire truck. And I think that this is one very obvious strategy that the public is starting to take notice of, that, you know, you can't really see the accident scene because there's a giant fire truck in the way, and we love that. That really, really helps us focus on our job and know that we have some level of protection. This is also kind of a topic that we're towing industries are kind of still working through, but disconnecting batteries, a lot of times the fire department will do that after a collision to prevent any additional fires that might happen. Sometimes that can happen after an accident. And then I left this part blank, where fire departments rely on us to I guess just in general, clean up the accident scene. I really would like a little bit more feedback, honestly, from fire departments, how they can rely on us a little bit more. Sometimes they have to use jaws of life to get someone out of the vehicle, and there has been a situation or two where we needed to winch a vehicle closer or in a different place so that they could get jaws of life to someone, but those are very rare instances. But next slide. So towing and police departments, we tend to have I don't mean to say best relationship with, but we do rely on each other more heavily, these two agencies, or at least with us and police departments, on a scene, because that's usually who's calling us out. So we do rely on police departments to direct traffic beyond the fire truck blocking it. Police might be there before a fire truck is even able to block the wreck scene. So we do rely on police departments, and we typically say we want to be hooking and booking. That's just kind of a term that we use in the towing industry, and the police departments allow us to be able to do that so we can get what's in the roadway out of the roadway and not having to worry about other vehicles. We rely on the police departments to dispatch us out when it's even appropriate. Just because someone's been pulled over and arrested does not mean their car needs to be towed. And just because someone has been involved in a fender bender does not mean their vehicle needs to be towed. We do rely on the police department to dispatch out other necessary services, like in an instance where someone has been involved in a wreck with a power pole. We need the power company to come out and ensure that it is safe to disconnect a vehicle from a power line or a power pole before we actually perform that service. And so police departments therefore then rely on us to occasionally provide jump starts or like tire changes, even just kind of as like the Good Samaritan kind of thing, where a police officer is trying to help someone get along their way. Occasionally we have been called on to unlock vehicles I stress this, in non-emergent situations. We would never, want a police officer to call us and wait 30 minutes when there's a child in a hot car. Then the other thing that we really, really want to make sure that other agencies know, that it is definitely the towing service's responsibility to fully clear the roadway of any and all debris, so that no other accidents happen, no one gets their tires impaled with glass, that sort of thing. Sometimes other agencies do pitch in to help, but a lot of times, the police officers will say, hey, to the tow driver, like, you need to make sure you're cleaning that up. And that's absolutely what they should be, making sure that we are clearing the roadway. All right, next slide. So towing and EMS, we rarely rely on them. Most of the time the EMS agency has already handled the people involved in the wreck. And so most of the time they're not on scene, but occasionally, we've given our business card to somebody in the back of an ambulance so that they know how to contact us about their car. That sort of thing could happen. But even if EMS says, I'm taking this person to the hospital, or I'm not, or any information that an EMS can give us about the owner of a vehicle is helpful, because once we take it back to our lot, we get involved with insurance companies and that sort of thing. So if we know someone's in the hospital and we haven't heard from him in 2 weeks, then that is helpful information to us that we can relay to the insurance company. All right, next slide. Okay, so I've talked about how we've kind of relied on other agencies and agencies rely on us. So just in closing, when we do arrive at a wreck scene, it is our job to report to whoever is in command of the incident. We in no way, shape, or form want to be in charge of a wreck scene. That is not our intention. We are the last to show up, and so in no way, shape, or form should a tow operator be in charge of an incident scene. Tow operators, again, kind of said this in different ways, but we do feel like we're an important part of the unified command operation. And again, we're very happy to be included in these trainings because we do rely on everyone, and everyone in some way, shape, or form does rely on us. So again, when we work together, it does help us create a focus of safety and quick clearance, and that benefits everyone, even people not involved in the accident scene. So I just wanted to harp on, since we've kind of talked about everybody's relationships, just how towing has changed and where towing is going. Our business has been around for 50 years, so I can really show kind of a history of where we've come from and how we used to dispatch calls even just 10 years ago on a radio, and the drivers would write down things on a pad and then respond to a scene. Well, even a little bit over 5 years ago, we were using trucking software that we just kind of made work for our company. But more so recently, there have been dispatching softwares that have been available to the towing industry specifically, and it has really revolutionized our industry in the sense that we are able to type in information into the software very quickly and send it to the driver via an app-based program to their phone, and they have the information much sooner and more accurate information much sooner so that they can respond to the scene much faster. So we also utilize some public information that's actually available to anyone that's aware of it. And Jeff had mentioned one of them before, like the 511 app, where we can look at interstate cameras. That is helpful to us. We also use the South Carolina Highway Patrol AutoCAD system that helps our dispatchers, which in turn helps our drivers as well. So again, kind of harping on the exact same ideas, that this training is very, very valuable to us. And given the fact that training opportunities are so limited for our industry, if any other agency has some sort of a training that you think would be valuable to the towing industry, please invite your local towing businesses. If you're not really sure who they are, you can contact your local police jurisdiction and ask who is on rotation, and try to extend the invite that way. It is just really, really beneficial to us to be included so that we can better assist all agencies involved. So thank you everyone for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you think of something at a later date, that's perfectly fine, but jot down my information. If I can't get the answer, we are a body of towing services all across the state, so if I can't get you the answer, I can definitely ask around and get the answer for you. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Anna. Appreciate it very much. And you are correct. The tow operators are a very important part of the overall incident scene, and we all need to train together and be part of that unified command and make sure that we're all playing off the same sheet of music. So I know that when I do classes throughout the state, we do extend invitations to the local tow operators, and in quite a few locations we've had some good participation. So we're still working on it, and we want to make sure that everybody gets through the training, and we have nothing but positive outcomes. So anyway, so that's good. Anna, we'll see you again this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Up next is Janice with Operation Lifesaver, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about what goes on in the railroad end of things, as it says here, in the interest of safety. So Janice, it's all yours.
Janice, I think you're on mute.
that better? Can you hear me now?
Got your
Yes,
sound.
we can hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me restart, but it is a nice sunshine picture. So, okay, I am Janice Cowan, the state coordinator for South Carolina Operation Lifesaver. And our mission is to share railroad safety education with South Carolinians and those that visit our state to prevent motor vehicle train collisions as well as trespassing incidents. We do take our message out to the public, but we also want to make sure that we are reaching out to traffic incident folks to make sure that they respond to the incidents and calls for concern and emergency situations that they need to respond to in a safe way if they are either near railroad tracks or if you have to cross railroad tracks in order to get to them. Things such as reminding yourself if you drive a vehicle with a siren that would drown out possibly the sound of an oncoming train. Contacting the railroad if you do have to be near the railroad tracks, whether it's an incident with a train or if it's another type of incident, an arrest that's going on, or even a fair or festival that is in your community, if there will be people congregating closer to the railroad track than you normally would have. Another thing we really want to make sure that people who are driving equipment remember that when you cross that railroad track, you need to make sure your entire vehicle gets across the track. If there's a stoplight or stop sign on the other side, we don't want people not remembering the length of a fire truck, for instance, or if they're towing a vehicle. And then anytime you're working near that track, making sure that you alert the railroad, but don't park too close to the train. Trains do have an overhang, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on. This is what we're trying to prevent. This is a crash which involved a car that drove around lower gate. Of course, that's against the law, but as you can see, the horrible damage that was done, what a tragic situation. And this is a lightweight Amtrak train, actually. So it's not the heaviest of trains that we see, freight trains primarily here in South Carolina. One thing about this crash photo that you don't see that you do in most vehicle crash photos is the intersection where it happened. If you look down the right side of the train all the way, you can kind of tell above that arrow that there's a little light, and that is where the intersection was. So they are devastating crashes, and we want to try to prevent those. And working with you guys in the communities, we can make some headway to making that happen. But these do happen every 3 hours across the United States. These tragic outcomes include injury and death in many cases, property damage, and environmental concerns, depending on what the train is carrying. If that train were to derail, we could have large environmental concerns on our hands. So here in South Carolina, as you can see, in 2019, we had an uptick in our crashes, unfortunately, but we will be having our 50th anniversary for Operation Lifesaver next year. And you can see from the chart here in South Carolina, but nationwide as well, we've had about an 83% reduction in our crashes. And that's due to teamwork from our volunteers, as well as with wonderful partners around our state, law enforcement, trucking companies, school bus drivers, school bus companies, driver education, everyone putting together, trying to share railroad safety education to get these numbers down. 2020, as we know, was an unusual year. So you will see that we had a drastic reduction in crashes down to 32. We do expect, as the economy and jobs, people get back to work and not working from home, that these numbers will go back up. And so that's why we work every day to try to prevent those from happening. As far as trespassing is concerned, you can see here that our numbers did go down slightly as well. But we kind of anticipate with people having outdoor activities as a safe way during COVID times that they may go up again as well. So that's us redoubling our efforts to get the message out to the public not to walk on railroad tracks. So how do we prevent these from happening? we remind people that anytime is train time. Trains run on tracks 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And we know that incidents also happen 24 hours a day. So if you are responding to an incident, we need to always remember that always expect a train. And trains can't swerve. As you can see from this photograph from inside the locomotive engine, there is no steering wheel. They can't steer left or right to avoid something in the path. So it really falls in our hands to make sure we're not trying to beat the train and be in front of the train as it comes along the tracks. Of course, trains can't stop quickly. It takes an average car about 200 feet, a bus 230, a truck about 300 feet or 1 football field. And as you can see, the freight train, which we do see mostly here in South Carolina, we do have Amtrak, but we have many more freight trains. That can take about 5,280 feet, which is a mile, or of course the equivalent of 18 football fields. An engineer at one end of 18 football fields would not even know that something was on the tracks ahead of them in order to try to stop in time to avoid it. So we just need to be aware when we come up to the crossing to listen for the train and always stop if we see or hear it approaching. So as you can see, that is a dramatic representation of what we have, a weight ratio that compares the impact of a train on a car compared to the impact of a car on the train. It's a 4,000 to 1 weight ratio, and it's just it does immense damage to anything that's in front of the train. So we want to make sure that we're trying to prevent people from getting in that position. Trains are heavy, as we've talked about, and trucks are heavy. So when we think about other crashes on the roadways, we do consider a truck a larger and heavier object. But this just shows, unfortunately, that it's no competition when it comes to a train. Trains are just heavy, and we need to be the ones making sure we don't drive in front of them. Again, in this picture, if you'll look down the left-hand side of the train, you can barely make out the roadway where this happened. So you can see the distance that train pushed that truck quite a long way. This is a new initiative that we've really been pushing thanks to a relatively new sign that's posted at railroad crossings. And it's what to do in the case of an emergency. First thing, of course, despite whether we think a train is coming or not, we encourage people to get out of the vehicle. If you are responding, if someone does call 911 and you get there and they're still in their cars, please ask them to get out. Even if you don't think there's a train coming, we need to get out of that car until we have contacted the railroad to make sure that there are no trains in the vicinity. If that's the case, we don't want to try to move or restart that car until the railroad has been contacted and you know that it's safe to do so. If someone is in this situation, if you're stuck or stalled on the tracks and the train is coming, we do want you to get out and run towards the train at a 45-degree angle. People sometimes are confused as to why you would run towards the train, but that's because the debris field will be going in the direction that the train is pushing your car. So you don't want to be hit by parts of your own vehicle. So if you get out of that vehicle, look for the blue and white sign that is posted near the crossing. It's either going to be right there on the crossbuck or relatively close to it. And we ask that you call the 1-800 number that is on that sign. People still call 911 first, and of course that's an appropriate thing to do, but then the 911 has to call the railroad company. So this is actually the fastest way to get information to the railroad company, because this 1-800 number goes to the railroad that operates at that crossing. And you can give them the crossing ID number, which will be those 6 numbers in 1 letter. So that's important because that's like the physical address for that crossing and no other crossing in the United States. The 1-800 number that's represented here with all the 5s is just an example. It is not an actual number. Each crossing will have its own number based on the railroad that operates at that location. And those 1-800 numbers are manned 24 hours a day.
Do you know what to do if you're stuck on the railroad crossing? Get out of your vehicle. If a train is not approaching, find the blue and white emergency notification system sign on the traffic signs at the crossing. For help, call the number on the sign and give them the crossing number so they know your location and can alert train traffic. Remember, find the blue and white to save your life.
So that is just one sign that is at a crossing. We work with road authorities, and the railroads work together with them to make sure there is signage and signals at the crossing. The first sign you're going to see when you approach a crossing is your round yellow advanced warning sign, indicating you are getting closer to the crossing. You'll have pavement markings as well. And then, of course, a double yellow line, which means no passing, just like any other intersection. At the crossing itself, you will have a crossbuck sign. That is a regulatory sign. So if you're in the enforcement arena and someone drives towards you across a crossing and darts just right in front of the train, feel free to pull them over and give them an education about how that was a dangerous thing to do. And then we do have a painted stop line on the road itself. By law, you have to stop no closer than 15 and no further than 50 feet from the crossing. So don't pass that stop bar. Make sure that you're staying back in that area. Now, those are passive signs. We also have some signs now that do actually have a stop sign on the crossing itself. But active warning devices can be lights flashing with a bell or lights, bells, and gates. And those mean stop. If they are activated, you need to stop. And in the case of lights, only proceed if it's safe to do so, if you don't see a train. In the case of gates, that gate closes that crossing and you're not allowed to drive around that gate unless instructed by a police officer. It is a 4-point violation to drive around the gates, and we do work with law enforcement, encouraging them to help educate the public if they see someone doing that very unsafe maneuver, because it is a 12 million pound train that could possibly be coming down the tracks. So there's a 3-foot overhang with the track. That 15 feet is important because you have that overhang, and there could also be straps or chains or other equipment hanging off of the train itself. So the 15 feet is very important, and that's important in the front when you're stopping ahead of a track, but also to make sure, as we indicated earlier, to make sure you clear your entire vehicle. And remember, whatever vehicle you're driving can vary. If you go to work in a truck and then you're driving something larger later, just be mindful you have to get across that track even further. We're running a campaign currently. As the weather gets better, we know people will get out and recreate. We're just reminding people that rails and recreation do not mix. And if you're pulling that camper or that boat, you have to have more storage space on the other side of the tracks to cross in case there's a stop ahead of them. So make sure you clear that track all the way. It is against the law to use the railroad tracks as a shortcut or sidewalk or a place to run. It's a dangerous location. You don't know when trains will come. They're actually much quieter than you would think. And so we ask people not to use those for recreation to get to and from to only cross railroad tracks at a designated crossing. And here are some of the other examples of things that we may have. People have gone down tracks to hunt and fish. ATV use, in that case, you'll have a lot of noise that would drown out the sound of a whistle. So just be very mindful if you do recreate, make sure that you're not doing it on the tracks, or you have to cross those tracks. Make sure you do it safely. And we would love for you to join our team. We do have an Operation Lifesaver Authorized Volunteer Program. If you go to our website at www.oli.org, and at the top of that website, you'll see the volunteer tab. You click on that, you fill out an application online. I'll get that application and hit approve, and you'll do an online class followed by used to be face-to-face. Currently, we are doing these via virtual means. 2-hour session to wrap up and show you all the materials that we have available for the very many different groups that we focus on in railroad safety. School buses, trucking companies, driver ed, young kids walking to and from school. All the people in your communities, we have messages and materials for, so we'd love for you to join our team. So in that, I'll say thank you for all that you do, and see TRASC, think train.
Thanks, Janice. That was a lot of really good information there. Let's touch briefly on what can happen with the media showing up at an event here. I know I was actively involved in this field for about 10 years as a PIO for the fire service agency that I was with, and we had a lot of incidents out on the interstates and elsewhere. And I worked very, very hard at developing relationships with various media persons, and making sure that when they showed up, they knew me by name, I knew them by name. I still have a good friendship with some of them. One moved on from our WIS station here and is up in the Bristol area now with and she is an anchor. If any of you remember Rebecca Pepin, she and I are still good friends. Some of these people are move on to other stations and other areas, but while they're here, we need to make sure that we get to know them and they get to know us. Next slide. So here we have an incident. This is on I-75 southbound in Florida, and we're using this because there's just some really good pictures here to give us a good display of what we're talking about. So this is down in the Naples area, just before you're going to hit Alligator Alley and head over towards Dade, Miami-Dade. But we're on I-75 South, and you can see we have a lot of cones set up. That's great. A lot of cones set up for this incident, transitioning traffic from lane 3 into 2 and 1. And everything seems to be going okay so far southbound. And as we very, very strongly suggest and promote in our Sharp 2 training, we have a problem on the southbound lanes. Let's keep everything on the southbound lanes. What's happened here is the media, as you can see, has set up a van on the left shoulder of the northbound side, and it's causing a traffic queue and opening up the possibility for a secondary crash on the northbound side. So because of their positioning, they've taken a southbound problem and added a northbound problem that we didn't have prior to this. Next slide, please. So we're looking downstream. We're looking back at the incident over in the left part of the picture, just beyond the trees. But more importantly, you can see the media van sitting on the left shoulder on the northbound side and the traffic queue that's building up behind that. That is critical. There are obviously better places where the media can set up, and we need to establish staging areas for media because we know they're going to show up because they have a job to do. And if they show up and set up like this, that's going to be a problem. If we set up a staging area and we get them into a pre-designated place, what is going to happen is, the next slide, please, you'll see no media set up on the left shoulder of the northbound side, and look at the traffic flow. So this is what we would like to see. So we're handling the incident on the southbound side, and it looks like they're doing a pretty good job with this. And the northbound side is flowing well. So that's important. Next slide, please. We've got to remember that they are going to show up. The worse the incident is, the more of them that will show up, and that's their job. We've got to make sure we've got a planned media staging area, and we need to understand that they have a job to do. They got a boss to report to, and we must have a designated person to talk to them. If the incident commander is really busy and can't talk to them, then we've got to make sure that there is someone who's designated as a public information officer, a PIO, and that they can give them the media some information. If we don't, we know for a fact they are good interviewers. They will talk to witnesses. They will get copies of cell phone videos and pictures, and they'll find a story. And every once in a while, it's not necessarily the correct story, and that's not their fault. That's just the information that they collect as they talk to people. Next slide, please. We need to use social media. We need to make sure that we send out an initial post of what's taking place, and we let the media know that, and then regular follow-up posts and updated info. Advise the media where to stage, who the PIO is, where to meet the PIO on the scene, and assure them that we will be giving them updates and good information in regards to what's going on at that incident. Some agencies, Highway Patrol, for example, is really good at this. Some of the larger police and fire agencies have designated PIOs. I will tell you that there is a great training program through the Emergency Management Division in the state, and they offer at no charge. Sometimes they're a little difficult to get in because they're very well run and popular, but they do have basic PIO and advanced PIO training there that we can send fire service. You can send battalion chiefs over to, squad leaders with law enforcement. The key is getting people through that training so that they understand that this is as important as anything else that we do out there, and it must be handled. If we don't, then things can tend to get out of shape a little bit. So we need to control that flow of information and the tone of the story, and allow the media to help us with things like promoting slow down, move over, and the fact that the wreck is set up, it's going to be a little while. There are some alternate routes they can take. I mean, they can do a lot of good things to help us with these incidents. And obviously, the last bullet there, that the worst thing we can do is just tell them no comment. Again, they'll start interviewing people, and they'll get some good information and or not so good information. I mean, and that's not their fault. And then things aren't good from that point on. So we need to make sure that we're handling that. So anyway, so that's what we're talking about with the media. We are on sctimnetwork.com, as well as we're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Feel free to join us. Check our Facebook page. Check the tweets that are sent out, and of course the bottom right there, sctimnetwork.com. You go to that website. Any of our training, any of our meeting dates and locations, they're all listed, and you're welcome to participate in any of those. We're very fortunate because the South Carolina Department of Transportation sponsors this program, so we're able to offer the training sessions all over the state at no cost to anyone who comes in to attend. And this is important stuff, and we haven't got numbers up to where we want yet, but we're working on it. If you'd like to get involved or like to host some training, please get a hold of us and let's get this done. Some contact information. The gentleman at SCDOT, who is the Traffic Incident Management Coordinator, you can see his information there, Ray Parker. There's his email and his phone number, and then it also lists my name and email and phone number. If there's anything we can help you with, anything we can answer for you, if we can schedule some training or come out and do a tabletop exercise and have a good two-dimensional look at what's going on, please feel free to get a hold of us, and let's get it scheduled and get it done. So anyway, so right now we're in good shape. We're inside of that magic hour, and we'd like to thank those of you that have joined us this morning. This will be or has been recorded. This will be available to anyone else that would like to view it on our sctimnetwork.com website. So feel free to share that with other people with your agency. So Jeff Corbin, you got anything else to add? I think I'm about done.
I think that concludes today's meeting.
Okay, thank you, people. Have a great day. Stay safe.